describe each person on your team as a person, not as the role or as the employee, how much could you tell me about them? Could you tell me their name? I mean, don't laugh. That actually did happen to me once, and my team really isn't that big. Could you tell me their spouse's name or their boyfriend or their girlfriend's name? Could you tell me a child's name? Could you tell me what they do for fun? I was at a GOA meeting once, and my dear friend and idol, Mike Rothschild, a great American, and I were out on a walk down the beach and trying to just sort of talk about stuff. And as we were walking, we came upon a guy named Larry Savage. Larry's actually been on this podcast before. His wife, Andrea Knuff, has also been on here. And at the time, Larry was working as a representative for a company, and we were just chit-chatting about things, and somehow along the way, Larry said, I knew as soon as I walked in all of your practices, all three of you, that you all had very successful practices. And Mike said, that's bull. I don't believe that. How do you know? Because that's kind of the contrarian he is. And Larry said, I knew that your practices were successful because of the way that you engaged your team. Successful practices, I have seen, basically do everything they can to try and engage their team more. And then Mike said, so what about those unsuccessful practices? He said, oh, that's pretty easy. He says, those practices are basically doing everything they can to avoid their team. And when you look at successful practices around you, you probably will find out that they are engaging their team, and those teams that are struggling are being led by a leader who is doing everything they can to avoid them. Now, with my newest team members, I'm probably going to struggle a little, but I'm doing everything I can to get to know more about them, and I'm making time to find out more about them. Hi, I'm Ted McElroy. Welcome to part 2 of a 3-part series of the Vision of Leadership podcast called Coaching as Leadership. And in this series, we're going to redefine leadership the way most businesses do it, not through controlling or advising or rescuing, but through coaching. Now, if you haven't listened to part 1 of the Coaching as Leadership series, it's not a problem. You don't have to go back right now and stop this episode and let's do it. You can. They do not necessarily build off of each other, but they all fit together. But if you want to listen to this first and then go back, that's fine. If you want to go back and listen to the first one now and then come to this one, that's great too. I'm just excited you're here, and I can't wait to talk to you about this. Have you ever been just flat out wrong about what you thought about one of your team members? Recently, I reintroduced myself to one of my team members' boyfriends. Full transparency, she's been working with me over the last 3 years, and I've met him 3 times, usually at our Christmas party. Yeah. Not my best moment. I get it. Yeah. Well, the question is, how well do we really know the people who work with us? You know, and this episode's kind of open our eyes that a lot of leaders, including me, struggle sometimes to know the personal side of the team member that's with us in business. And this could be the biggest constraint you have to coaching and culture in your business. You really can't coach someone well if you don't know who they are. And most of us, well, let's face it. How many of you have ever said, all right, you need to leave your problems at the back door? Let me ask you this question. Do you do that? Do you easily walk in the door and leave all your problems behind? I can't silo myself like that. I can't compartmentalize nearly that well. If I'm having a tough day, it comes out and it shows. And my teammates are the same way. And it's not fair to think they can't. You see, we're all whole people. We're not just a work person and an outside work person. And leaders should know that they can't just coach the work person, because there's not really a difference between the work person and the whole person. So what happens when we reduce our people to a task or a role? do you tend to refer to your team members as the front desk person or the optician or the tech? Because these labels don't really tell you the role behind or the person behind that role. So what could really be wrong with that? There was a really great colleague of ours named Jack Runninger. I loved Jack. Jack was probably the reason why I'm sitting here and talking to you. He first got me involved in writing, and out of that came podcasting. Now, for some of you that might be thinking, wow, I really would like to go back and give Jack a piece of my mind, but I hope not. But Jack had some great friends, some very famous friends. One of them was Irv Borish. Now, he wrote a book called, I believe, Clinical Refraction. And it was the guidebook for refraction when I was going through school. I think Monty Vickers wrote an article one time about Irv Borish and this book. And these guys were great friends, and they would show up at Seco a lot of times and just walk the halls. And it was like watching the Red Sea split as these two guys came walking down the exhibit hall together. Well, Jack tells this story that many years prior to that, he and Irv had gone to this cafeteria type food establishment to eat. And while they were there, they were going through the line and ordering or picking out their food. And when they got to the meat section, Jack picked out his choice, and Irv wanted to get the fish plate. Well, they had literally just run out. In fact, the guy right in front of him had taken the last one. But they said, "Don't worry, sir, we have another one. We'll be glad to fix one for you. It's just going to take a moment for us to continue to finish up those and bring more to the counter here. So why don't you take this number with you, and we'll come find you, and we'll bring it to you." Sound like a great idea, right? Perfect. So they get their food, they get their drinks, they walk out to their table, they sit down, and they hadn't been sitting there very long at all before this guy comes walking up with a tray with a plate on it, and he looks at the table and he says, "Who is the fish plate?" Not who has the fish plate, but who is the fish plate. And Jack says, what's really intriguing about this is here is this guy who wrote the book on how to do refractions. In optometry at that time, there was probably no one more famous in optometry, and now he had just been reduced to a fish plate. We kind of do the same thing with our team members. We reduce them to the labels of what they do, not who they really are. So how does knowing someone well change the way you coach them? Well, if you just think them as a role, you're only going to look at it by coaching what they do. If you look at them as a person, you're going to coach more on what they're capable of. So if one of your team members were struggling, would you know? Would you care? And what's the difference between proximity and connection? I think that's the real challenge when it comes to coaching. We think that just because we're close to somebody, we've got them all figured out. Many years ago, I wish I could remember who came up with this, but I used it in a great thing. So my wife and I are both Christian, but we are of different faiths. I am Baptist. My wife is Catholic. My children were raised Catholic. It's really given me a very nice appreciation of my Christianity to see Christianity in a different context. It's let me know there's a whole lot more in common than there is differences. That's a long another story, but we can get into that sometime if you want to talk to me at an exhibit hall somewhere. But the interesting thing about this is because I'm married to someone who's Catholic, I was in a Bible study group with a bunch of Protestant guys. And because I was married to a Catholic, when that time Pope was coming into play, I think it might have been Pope Benedict was the one that came out of that conclave, people were asking me all these questions about how the Pope's picked. And I said, well, I got to tell y'all something. Just because I live next to the airport doesn't mean I can fly. that's kind of how it is with the proximity way of our connection with our team members. If we don't connect with them, if we don't engage with them, which we spent some time talking about on the last episode of engaging our team members, it makes it really difficult to know who they are and how to relate to them. We also need to make sure that we're asking meaningful questions, but a lot of times we avoid those meaningful questions. Why do we do that? Why do we avoid the meaningful questions about our team members' lives? You know, part of it is, well, I'm going to tell you for me, sometimes the reason I don't do it is because I'm afraid they're going to turn around and ask me some meaningful questions. And that's going to make me seem braggy or whiny or something like that. So I just figure the easiest way to do this is just to avoid the questions altogether, not ask them. Well, the problem with that is it doesn't let me get to know more about them. I reintroduce myself to the boyfriend for the third time. I don't know a team member's name. I don't know about them. I don't have a way to talk to them. When I'm sitting in a group of our team members, I don't say a word. I just sit there because I don't know what to say. I feel lonely. And you know, they always say leadership is lonely, or it's lonely at the top. That's because you chose it to be. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be a lot more engaging and a lot more enthusiastic about the way things go. You can find a lot of inspiration from these people you get to work with. They've done some really hard things in their life. They've done some really cool things in their life. They're doing some cool things right now. But if you don't take the time to figure it out, then you don't have this connection. And coaching requires that we know something about them. You can't guide someone that you're not truly curious about. What do you really know about the lives of the people you spend most of your waking hours with? Think about that for a minute. I spend more time awake with my team than I do with my wife, Kristen, or I did with my kids, because I'm here 8 hours a day. At home, I'm maybe got 4 more hours with them. And what starts happening is you start avoiding your team. And that is the number one silent killer of business, is avoiding your team, because it unintentionally starts to create fear. The silence is a culture shaper. They think that maybe you just don't like them, or you don't care about them. It's definitely not healthy. That's for sure. You need to care enough to be curious. And by doing so, you will find that this connection starts creating them to care more about things. I hear this question a lot. How do I get my team to care more about blank? Well, do you care about them? I mean, because if you don't care about them, they're not really going to care about your business. They're going to punch a ticket, they're going to get a paycheck, and they're going to go home. But if you care about them, they'll knock over walls for you. They'll figure out ways to watch over the money for the business. And sometimes it comes down to the fact that you've got to have a hard conversation with somebody. And hard conversations are way easier to have if you care about a person than they are if you don't care about them or you don't know something about them. Is there somebody you need to have a conversation with right now in your business? Probably is. It may not be something serious, but you probably need to have a conversation about something. So why are you avoiding that conversation? Is it fear? Is it frustration? Is it time? I don't know. But also, how many times have you had this conversation with this person in the car by yourself? I do this all the time. I'm in the car having this conversation with somebody who's not even there, and I go through the whole thing and it accomplishes zero. Now I realize part of it is me practicing how I'm gonna do it, but the problem is if I practice it and I practice it and I practice it but I never do it, all I've done is just build up a bunch of cortisol. I haven't really fixed the problem at all. So by having this conversation, I've really done nothing to solve my problem. I've done nothing to solve their problem. I've done nothing to engage them to help figure out how we fix this problem. So what would happen instead of stepping back if we leaned in, if we showed that we cared about how this goes? Avoidance causes disengagement, which leads to turnover and inconsistency. When you avoid your team, they're going to avoid the effort. Just like I said a moment ago, if you don't care about them, they're not going to care about anything that goes along with what you do. Maybe not to begin with, but eventually. And avoidance is really subtle. It creeps in really easily. I mean, I see myself with it all the time. I've got to go pay the bills. I got to answer emails. I've got to do something when what I should be doing is standing up in that administrative area and having a conversation, or walking in to the optical and having a conversation, or sitting down with my billing person and having a conversation. Just a conversation. Nothing big. Doesn't have to be hard. What'd you do this weekend? How'd that go? What you got planned for this weekend? What makes you think that's going to be fun? I've never considered doing that. Tell me more about that. That's it. Every struggling business you see has a disengaged leader. We've talked about this. It's kind of universal, and it's not any different in optometry. It happens in our profession just like it happens for everybody else. Before we move on, I want to talk today also about our sponsor, which today is me. We are actively looking to bring a new doctor to Vision Source Tifton. When I first began practicing, I felt the tension that a lot of optometrists feel, whether they're new in practice or they've been in practice for a while and working with somebody else, or they're just not quite where they feel like they should be. I wanted to do great clinical work, but it kind of got mixed with burnout and pressure in a system that I had no control over, and I felt like a cog in a wheel instead of the doctor that I wanted to be. And for many of us, that crowds out family and relationships and community. Maybe you're feeling this tension between professional growth and personal fulfillment. You're thinking, can I have it both, or do I have to choose? Here at Vision Source Tifton, we've been doing something different. We have created a practice that has high-level clinic acumen and technology. We've got a deeply relational culture here, and it's rooted in the belief that we shouldn't have to choose between meaningful life and a meaningful career. If you're looking for a place where you can practice excellent optometry, you can care deeply for your guests, and still have margin for your family in a thriving small town, I'd love to have you come to Tifton. In fact, I will bring you here and show you what we've done. Just get in touch with me by emailing me at tmcelroy@friendlycity.net. That's T McElroy at friendlycity.net. I'd love to bring you here and show you what this is like and give you an opportunity to get a clear picture of both your career path and your family's future. And now back to part 2 of coaching as leadership. So when it comes to doing this, you've got to build this process in place. It's, as Michael Hyatt said, that which gets scheduled gets done. That which gets scheduled gets done. I'm going to say that again because my lips didn't work right there. So how do I even start doing this? Is it going to be weird? Kind of is at the beginning. And I'm going to go ahead and disavow you if it's going to be all cool and comfortable. It's going to be strange at the very beginning. You got to be visible with your team members. That's the best place to start. Just being out there, not in here in your office. Now, I'm in my office right now because it's in the evening and there's nobody here right now. Well, actually there is one person here right now, but not one of our normal team members, the person who takes care of our office. But I know her really well because she also takes care of my home. And I've known her and her children since they were very young. So it's easy. I can have nice conversations with her. I made it a point to get to know who she was. but it was by being visible. You got to be out in the optical. You got to be in the billing office. You got to say, hey, how you doing? But probably the best way to start with this thing, because it is going to be kind of weird, is to say, I apologize. This is what I feel like's been missing in my leadership, is my sitting down and having a conversation with you. And I apologize that I haven't made this a priority, that I've made other things a priority. But from now on, moving forward, this is a priority because I want to get to know you better so that we can do some great things here together. And check in weekly with them. It doesn't have to be anything big. Andy Stanley has a great thing that he does where he has just 3 questions. First thing he does, he tells them ahead of time, we're going to do this a little bit. And he's already apologized for not being involved. This was many years ago. But then he says these 3 questions. First one is, what are you working on? Second question, how's that going? Third question, what can I do to help? Or how can I help? These are 3 really powerful questions because I promise you, no one in their career that they've had prior to this has ever done that to them. Very few, at least. And by doing this, you're literally creating this connection. It sounds silly, but it works well. And it's not manipulative at all because it's showing that you really care about what they're doing, what they do bring to the practice and how it's going for them and what you can do to help. And I promise you, more often than not, when you say, how can I help? They're not going to give you a laundry list of things you've got to do. More often than not, they're going to go, I got it. And they do. But sometimes it might be something like, hey, Doc, my computer, it's like still using DOS or it's just not working like it should. The Windows 11 doesn't have an update anymore, and technically that's kind of a HIPAA problem, so we need to fix that anyway, but, or maybe they need some other resource, or maybe they just need to talk it through with you. Maybe that's it. It's not going to be difficult, I can promise you. The fact is, going back to what we talked about earlier about leaving your problems at the door, when they clock in to work, they don't clock out of life. Just like you, they've got health issues. They've got financial challenges. They've got family problems. They've got confidence in what they're doing. They're scared. I'm scared. You can't just coach the working version of somebody. You've got to coach that whole person. And if you don't take the time to find out what's going on, if somebody's struggling, are you going to know? Are you going to care? You got to do this. You got to be there, and it's got to be scheduled. It's got to be planned. You don't have to process all the questions necessarily, but you do have to have an idea of where you're kind of going to go with this thing. And you need to sort of think about who's going to be in these conversations. I sit down quarterly with each team member, and in the room also is our operations administrator, Allison. And I do this because I want to have someone else that's kind of on their side, that's in their corner, or maybe as a neutral party. And speaking of neutral, I recommend doing this on neutral ground, not in your office, because that's a scary place. And if it's like mine, it's kind of messy too. So it needs to be, picked up. Do you want to have coffee there? Do you want to have some food there? I don't know. Do it however you want to do it. There's no rules. There's no rules to this. Just make it yours. I'm just giving you some ideas. But what I would recommend doing is not winging it. I would recommend going there with some tools, some questions ahead of time that you're kind of going to ask. Like, what are you working on? How's that going? How can I help? If you'd like, there's also a white paper that you can get that I'll talk about at the end of the episode, but the links are at the very end of the show notes. It'll give you the Vision of Leadership whole person coaching white paper. There's another thing that's really great. There's a guy named by John A. Cuff, who has these things called soundtracks decks. It's a conversation deck. You can use it for parties. You can use it but I've used them for a while with my team, and I loved it. They kind of liked it too. Maybe not as much as I did, but they did like it. It has things like on one side of the card, it will say something like, be brave enough to be bad at something new. And on the back is a question. What's something you've always wanted to try but haven't because you're afraid of being bad at it? Do you ever expect to be an instant expert at things you've never done before? And there's lots of questions, lots of comments like that. And by having those, it starts a conversation. Or you can come up with your own questions. You can use some of my questions. There's going to be some on that coaching white paper I told you about. One of the questions I love to ask, like I asked at the very beginning of episode 1 was, or maybe it was this episode, I can't remember, but what's something that I do that drives you crazy? I love it because it makes it more real for them. I asked that in front of a group of people one time with my team members in the room. And Samantha, who's my scribe and spends more time with me probably than anybody else in this office. She's like my conscience almost. She said in front of everybody, I hate it when you turn around and look at me when the chair just goes down on its own because you think that I left it down too low when you know that cylinder is losing gas and it won't stay up anymore. I was a little embarrassed, but I did thank her because I immediately went out on the show floor as soon as we got done and I bought a new chair. Lack of authentic knowledge of people weakens the connection, accountability, motivation, trust, retention. You got to get this regular cadence of check-ins. Create some simple rhythms. Maybe do a weekly micro check-in. Just, again, being seen out there in the administrative area or walking into their area. And then monthly having some conversations with a group of people in the department. Maybe it's an optical team department meeting. Maybe it's the clinic team department meeting. And then once a quarter, have a whole person conversation. Talk about what matters to them. Be curious and not authoritarian. This kind of engagement, engaged leaders succeed. Disengaged leaders struggle. I know I've talked about this a lot. You can't coach someone you don't know. And you can't lead a team that you're avoiding. Engagement isn't optional. This is foundational. So as we're getting ready to go into the next episode, I'm going to ask you to ask a couple of questions before you leave this one. Do I truly know the people that I lead, or I just know their work output? What's one relationship on my team that needs engagement this coming week? In episode 3, we're going to take all this and put it together in one simple framework where you can use it in pretty much any kind of conversation. It's called the Vision Coaching Framework. This is where we turn the whole person coaching into something that you can use immediately and consistently. And also, if you want 10 transformational questions that you can use in this whole person coaching, it's going to be on the Vision of Leadership Whole Person Coaching White Paper, which you can get at www.icodemedia.com/vision coaching. You can also see it in the show notes. This has been part 2 of Coaching as Leadership series, where we grow our people by learning to coach the whole person, not just the employee. That will grow your business. I'm so excited you came here today with us, and I can't wait to talk to you on our next episode. Thank you.